You don't remember walking home after the burial. Your feet find the path by muscle and sorrow, your boots soaked from the thawing snow, and your hands numb. Despite the wool gloves he always insisted were too thin for mountain winters, the trail from the chapel to the forge feels longer than it should. Maybe because you left with fewer pieces of yourself than you started the day with. They'd buried him beside the coal pile, not in the town cemetery, but on your land, where the smoke from the chimney still lingers like breath that won't leave. It was his wish. You honored it. But the part that won't let go of you, the part that keeps your skin cold despite the heat of the forge, is what came after. The preacher, that old circuit man with hands that shook even before he drank, leaned close to your ear after the final prayer. His voice rasped like old parchment. He told me something the night before, said he cursed his work, said the hammer, "Don't forget." Then the preacher collapsed. Right there at the edge of the grave, died before you could ask a single word more. Now you're alone in every way that matters. The forge door groans when you push it open. Inside, the heat still clings to the walls. Tools hang where he left them, each one placed just like he taught you. The hammer rests on the anvil, stained dark near the grip. The fire, strangely, hasn't died. You could swear it should have been ash hours ago. You don't touch anything, just stand there, let the heat warm the ache in your chest. Let your eyes drift to the corner where your wedding dress still hangs, singed at the hem from a careless spark on your first anniversary. He was rough, but never cruel. You two fit in ways you didn't talk about in public, like a steel rod and fire, sharp words, but always shaped with love. Until 3 nights ago, when he came home late, hands bleeding and voice hoarse. He didn't say why, just mumbled something about a man named Ledger and debt paid in flesh. You didn't push, should have. A creak draws your attention to the rafters. You look up, nothing, just the groan of wood remembering winter. But your hand rests on the iron ring he forged for you, still warm, still heavy. There's a scratch on the wall you don't remember, a pattern, half circle, then 3 notches. Your fingers hover over it, uncertain. That's when you hear it. A single pop from the forge, then silence. The fire is watching you. You can feel it, not with eyes, but with memory. And somewhere deep in your chest, something answers it. You know grief. You were raised by it, married into it, and now you might become it. But you also know this. If he cursed that fire, he did it for a reason. And if that preacher was right, then the hammer on that anvil is holding something back, or waiting. The sun sets slow over the Rockies, but tonight it feels like it dives too fast, like it wants to leave you here to face whatever comes next. Alone. You walk back outside, stand by the grave. You don't cry. Not yet. Instead, you whisper 2 words to the soil. Tell me. And for the briefest second, you swear the anvil rings, without being struck. The fire inside does not go out. It never will. You wait until the sky lightens again before going back inside. The hours between dawn and decision are the longest you've ever known. You've faced loss before. Your mother's quiet passing, your brother's fall from the rafters, the miscarriage that no one but you named. But this grief sits differently. It has hands. You pour water on the forge. It hisses, steams, and glows brighter. The hiss sounds like breath, like a long-held warning leaving someone else's throat. You step back, try again. More water, more sizzle. And still the coals don't die. You kneel, check the bellows. Nothing's moving. You haven't pumped air through since before the burial. But the fire, it's pulsing now, like a heartbeat under iron ribs. You whisper his name, just once, and the fire flares high enough to catch the rafters in gold. You didn't believe in curses before yesterday. But something's changed. The forge was his church, his confession booth, his place to work out pain no words could hold. You know that now. And maybe you were always meant to inherit more than his tools. You search the shop careful and slow. His coat still hangs on the back peg. There's a note in the pocket, one line, written in his clumsy left hand. If it wakes, bury the ledger. You don't know what that means, but you remember something else. The man he met with 3 weeks back, rough coat, scar over the eye, rode a dun-colored gelding, stayed just an hour, but your husband didn't eat the rest of that night. And the next morning he hammered like the anvil had wronged him. You run your fingers along the workbench. That's when you feel it, a loose board. Beneath it, a small tin box wrapped in oiled cloth. Inside, not a ledger, but ashes. Black, cold, smelling not of wood or coal, but of something fouler. Burnt skin maybe, bone. You drop the box. It lands hard. The forge flares again, brighter now, furious, like it's hungry. You slam the lid shut and shove it back where you found it. Your hands are shaking, not from cold. Outside a dog howls once, and then silence again. You need help, but the kind you need doesn't wear a badge or quote scripture. It's the kind who speaks to fires like old friends. And you remember, there was once a woman who lived on the far ridge, 2 valleys over, called herself Smoke Sister, midwife or healer. Some said witch, some said worse, but your husband once sent her a horseshoe in trade, said she knew iron like some folks know weather. You have no one else. You wrap your shawl tight, grab your mother's knife, and head toward the edge of town. The forge stays behind, glowing steady, a second sun in a dying world. And as you walk, you feel it at your back. Watching, waiting, still warm. The trail to the ridge is quiet but not still. Birds flit through frost-bitten branches, their wings too light to break the hush. You walk fast, not just because you need answers, but because something in the forge's glow feels aware now, as if your leaving made it restless. You reach the edge of the pine belt just before noon. Smoke curls above a weather-beaten shack, the kind built more for bones than comfort. You knock once, then again. No answer. A crow cries from the trees behind you, sharp and sudden. You're about to turn back when the door creaks open. Not by a hand, just opens. Inside nothing stirs but heat, and the smell, but sage, tallow, metal, and blood. You step back instinctively. That's when you hear hooves on the gravel behind you. You whirl. He sits astride a roan mustang, tall in the saddle, face half-shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, skin like cured leather, jaw sharp, and hands. His hands are wrapped in linen, freshly wrapped, still damp with whatever balm was used underneath. He dismounts without a word, nods once to you, then says, "You're Rachel of the Forge, aren't you?" You don't answer at first, just nod, carefully. Because he didn't ask, he told. The man steps past you, pushes the shack door open wider. "Smoke Sister's dead," he says, like it's weather. 3 days ago I buried her out back. You blink. "I didn't hear." He shrugs. Town doesn't listen to Smoke. He steps inside, motions for you to follow. You hesitate, but you do. because something about his voice isn't dangerous, just distant, like someone who's lived too long with fire. The shack's interior's simple: clay bowls, strings of dried roots, 2 books, one open to a page marked "Curse Retrieval Through Iron Repetition." The man pours water into a tin cup, offers it. You take it. "You came here for help," he says. You nod. "My husband, he died 4 days ago. A preacher said he cursed his own work, and now the forge won't go out." He finishes for you, quiet, calm. Your breath stops. Yes. He sits on the single stool in the room, peels one of the bandages from his palm. The skin underneath is pink, raw, shaped like an anvil, like the brand of a blacksmith, or a warning. "I was with him," he says. You freeze. "What?" "2 years ago, in Dawson's Pass. We fought side by side after a barn fire turned ugly. We were friends. Not often, but enough." You study his face now, trying to place it. "He called me Ledger," the man says. The name your husband muttered before his death. You drop the cup. He doesn't flinch, just says, "He did something for me, paid something, in pain, in iron. Said he owed more than money, said the forge held it all." Your voice cracks. "Held what?" The man finally looks at you full. "The thing that burned my hands. And yours, if you don't stop it." Outside wind stirs the trees. The shack creaks once. "Whatever he buried with that hammer," the man says, "it's not done." You step back, not from fear, but from weight, the truth pressing hard against everything you thought you knew. Ledger stands, rolls his sleeves. "We've got to reopen the fire." You shake your head. "It's already burning." He nods, solemn. "Then we need to find out what it wants." Behind you, the sky darkens, though no clouds pass overhead. And far away, in the forge you left behind, the hammer falls. Once. No hand upon it, just sound, like a verdict beginning. You and Ledger return to town just past dusk. You ride his Mustang bareback, saddle sore and silent, with the wind tugging at your braid and the scent of sage still clinging to your shawl. The lights of the forge glow brighter than any lamp, but you ride past it, for now. He said the fire will wait, that the town won't. Main Street saloon doors are open, spilling lamp glow and liquor breath into the street. Friday night, which means someone's bound to bleed before it's done. You just didn't expect it to be a child. He's maybe 8. Dirty face, knees scraped raw, crying into a torn shirt that ain't his. 2 men, both too drunk to walk straight, are shoving each other near the water trough, knocking over crates and curses, and there, crouched between them, is the boy. You don't think, just move. You yank him back by the collar, right? As one man swings wide, tumbles, and smashes headfirst into the post where the town's rules are nailed. Blood blooms behind his ear like a cruel flower. The crowd gasps. Someone shouts your name, Rachel of the Forge, Rachel the widow, Rachel the cursed. You stand there holding the boy, your breath ragged, your hand still outstretched. And the whispers come fast. She's always near when someone falls. She touched him, and he dropped like stone. She should have burned with her husband's tools. You don't argue. You've learned not to. Ledger steps behind you, quiet as smoke, but his presence says more than a dozen words could. The boy clings to your waist now, silent but unafraid. Sheriff Dunn finally pushes through the circle, sees the blood, sees you. "I heard it was an accident," you say first. He squints. Not at the man bleeding, but at you. "You were near the preacher when he died," he mutters. You touched this boy, and now he's breathing, you snap. He's safe. Ledger's voice cuts next. You want to blame someone? Blame the drunk swinging fists. But it's too late. A woman from the back, a widow named Alice, whose husband died in the same mine fire you once tried to warn him about, steps forward. She brings ruin, Alice says. Always did. Always will. You see it in their eyes now, not just suspicion. Fear because you didn't cry when your husband died, because your forge still burns, because the boy who should have been crushed somehow stands. You kneel, check him for injuries, find none. What's your name? You whisper. He doesn't speak, just points to the forge down the hill. Ledger sees it too, nods. The sheriff gestures. Take him, but be gone by morning. You meet his gaze. And if I'm not? He doesn't answer, just turns. And leaves you there, a woman with fire on her hands, a silent boy at her side, and a town too scared to admit they need either. Later that night, Ledger stokes the forge. The coals flare in response, like they've been waiting. The boy sits near the wall, drawing shapes in the soot with a broken nail, circles, lines, a spiral that looks almost like the mark above your husband's grave. You whisper, "What are you trying to tell me?" He doesn't speak, but his hand never stops drawing. And when you blink, you realize he's not drawing at all. He's copying. There are symbols on the forge stone, old ones, not English, not even letters, but they shine when the fire rises. And you understand deep in your bones, this forge doesn't just make tools, it remembers. They gave you until sunrise. The sheriff didn't say it twice. Didn't need to. The silence from the others said enough. No one would stop what came next. And no one would stand beside you if it came to fire. So you wait until the moon rises full. Then you open the forge door and walk inside like it's the only church left on earth. The boy follows. Quiet as always, Ledger stays by the fence, sharpening a blade you haven't asked about. You know what it means. Well, men like him don't shape steel unless they expect to use it. But you reach for the hammer. It's right where you left it, balanced, waiting, still warm from a fire that never dies. You lift it once, and the forge answers. Flames leap, the walls hum. A gust of heat rolls across the floor like breath from the mountain itself. You set the boy's drawings beside the anvil. You match the lines he traced to the marks burned into the stone, not decoration, not accident, a map. Ledger steps closer. You know what that is? No, you say. But the forge does. And with that, you strike. The hammer falls, not on iron, but on memory. And it sings. The echo of it rings down the road, up the hill, through every board of every house that once took warmth from this place. It's a sound the town hasn't heard since your husband's last day, when he forged something he never named, never delivered. You strike again. The second hit burns blue, the third white. And then something impossible. Sparks leap backward into the shadows, lighting a shape on the wall you've never seen before. Your husband's silhouette, just for a moment, his stance, his shoulder tilt, the way he'd lean slightly right, like the weight of the world clung to one side. Then it's gone. Ledger breathes out, low. That wasn't just heat, you nod. No. The boy approaches, reaches out, places something on the anvil, a tooth, small, yellowed, human. You look at him, startled. He doesn't speak, but he points again to the forge. The fire flares as it touches the tooth, and the metal inside bubbles without you pumping the bellows. Ledger swears under his breath. He forged with bone. You whisper, why? No answer. Just heat. You press your palm against the iron ring on your finger, feel it thrum. And you know, your husband didn't curse the forge. He fed it, bound something into it, not to hurt anyone, but to hold something back. And now it's breaking. Outside footsteps scrape on gravel. Voices murmur, they're coming. You don't stop. You hammer faster. Not to build, but to call. The fire climbs the walls. The cymbals glow full. And far above the stars seem to shift. Not move, but tremble. As if they too remember what this fire was made to contain, and fear what happens when it's unbound. They say no man rides into this town after dark unless he's got something wicked on his heels or something worse waiting in his pocket. Tonight, both are true. You hear the hoofbeats before the rest. Ledger stiffens at the sound, his blade tucked halfway into its sheath. The boy, still silent, walks to the window and tilts his head, not afraid, but aware. Then comes the creak of leather, a horse exhaling, and finally, a voice. Rachel Holloway. You step out of the forge. The moon hangs low, fat and bruised. A wagon stands on the main road just outside your fence. Atop it, a man in a long wool coat, gray at the collar, slick with trail dust. His eyes are sharp, his presence sharper. Circuit Judge Lemuel Carrington. You remember him from the inquest after the mine fire. He quoted scripture like it burned his tongue, then ruled against every widow seated in the pews. Now he nods once, eyes unreadable. I brought what your husband owed. You frown. Owed who? The judge tosses down a small, bound book. It hits the dirt with a thud that feels heavier than its size. You don't pick it up. Ledger does. He flips it open. His brow tightens. This isn't a ledger, he mutters. It's a confession. The judge dismounts. Behind him, the wagon creaks again, loaded not with legal tomes or supplies, but firewood. He notices your glance. For the forge, he says simply. You step forward. Why now? His jaw flexes. Because I made him forge it, because I watched him burn it in. Burn what? The judge's voice drops. A verdict, one that couldn't be written on paper. You glance toward the forge. Its fire flickers strangely, as if listening. Carrington walks past you, slow, like every step hurts. I sentenced a man who wasn't guilty, he says, not because he was innocent, but because the man who was guilty had money, power, and something worse. He looks to you. Your husband knew, and he couldn't live with it. Ledger mutters. So he forged justice into iron. The judge nods. And buried the evidence. You blink. The tooth. The boy stirs. Carrington sees him and stills. That child was there the night of the hanging. You look sharply at the boy. He stares at the judge. He didn't speak then either, Carrington says. Just watched. And when the rope snapped, he smiled. A chill crawls your spine. You glance to the forge. The fire pulses once. Carrington speaks low. Your husband took something into himself that night. Took the crime, took the guilt, and locked it in fire. You whisper, but now it's waking. He nods. Because guilt doesn't die. It waits. The judge kneels in the dirt, opens his pack, pulls out a small iron brand, shaped like the spiral you saw the boy draw. I want to finish it, he says. This time, I want to make it right. Ledger says nothing. The boy steps back. You take the brand from the judge's hand, feel its weight, and you understand. This isn't about flame, it's about memory. The town didn't curse you. The fire didn't curse him. Justice did. And now the fire wants something returned. You turn, walk into the forge, and begin again. The morning air hangs heavy. Smoke from the forge coils up toward a sky the color of wet ash. You've worked through the night, shoulders stiff, hands blistered, but the fire hasn't dimmed. If anything, it's steadier now, quieter, like a heart that's found its rhythm again. Outside, no one speaks to you directly, but they come, one by one. They bring broken things, a cracked scythe from old man Garrison's farm, the lock from Alice's pantry, a dented horseshoe from the McAllister boy's mule. No one thanks you, but no one stops coming either. Ledger watches from the porch. He says nothing, just keeps sharpening and listening. The boy sits cross-legged by the anvil, his drawings more focused now, symbols, circles, the spiral repeated over and over. Sometimes he points to the tools you're shaping. Sometimes he nods, like he knows which ones matter most. You start with the easy repairs, tools meant to dig and mend, not harm. You won't make weapons, not yet, not unless, and that's when the judge returns. Carrington carries no documents today, just a burlap sack. Inside, iron shavings, a page torn from a courthouse record, and a single name etched in brass. Daniel Paxton, you don't need to ask. He was the man hanged, the one the boy smiled for, the one your husband tried to speak for. Too late. The judge hands you the nameplate. I want you to melt this into the next blade you make. You hesitate. He adds, not for punishment, for memory. You understand then. This forge, it doesn't just build, it remembers what others forget. It burns what the town buries. So you melt it. The brass hisses as it joins the iron. The fire rises. The anvil rings. By sunset, you've made 5 tools. 3 go to the farms, 1 to the saloon's busted lock, and the 5th, a thin iron rod shaped like a spine, stays here. Ledger holds it up, frowns. What's it for? You answer without thinking. To keep people upright. The boy finally speaks. Just one word. Justice. You freeze. Ledger's eyes narrow. Say it again. The boy doesn't, but you're certain of what you heard, and when you look at the spiral in the soot, you realize something. It's not a curse, not a trap, not even a brand. It's a doorway, and your husband forged it open the night he died. You finished the last repair by lamplight. Carrington helps you douse the tools in snow melt. Ledger watches the street. You notice something strange now. The town is quieter, less angry, maybe not at peace, but softer at the edges. A girl brings bread. A man leaves a sack of kindling. Nobody says sorry. But you feel it anyway, because sometimes redemption doesn't come in words. It comes in the shape of something useful. And this forge, your forge, has become the place where every broken thing gets one last chance. The boy comes every evening now, barefoot even in the chill, soot on his fingers and ash in his hair. He never knocks. Just walks in when the fire wakes up, as if he hears it. You still don't know his name. You tried asking once. He only looked at you, pointed to the spiral on the forge wall, then drew a line across his throat with 2 fingers. Ledger thought it meant silence, but you're starting to believe it means binding. The others avoid him, not out of cruelty, but unease. They whisper things like bad omen and witch's debt, but none of them dare send him away. He helped you rebuild the hinges on the chapel door last week. And when Carrington's mule collapsed from fever, it was the boy who laid a cold cloth on the beast's neck until the shaking stopped. Now he sits beside the fire holding something in his hands, a scrap of leather sewn shut with horsehair thread. You crouch beside him. What is it? He doesn't speak, but his eyes say everything. It's his. You reach for it gently, unfold the stitching. Inside, wrapped in the dark cloth, is a tooth, like the first one, but this one is shaped wrong, filed. Too clean, not from a body buried, but from a body prepared. Carrington steps closer. His breath catches. That's a court ritual, he mutters. Old frontier rite. Judges would keep the last tooth of a hanged man, as proof the punishment was carried out. Your voice is quiet. You kept it. He shakes his head. Not me. He looks at the boy. I think he took it back. Ledger lifts the cloth, inspects the tooth. This isn't Paxton's. You nod. Then whose? The boy taps the anvil, then taps it again. 1, 2, 3 times. Ledger swears. 3 teeth. Carrington stiffens. That's not possible. The forge sparks, without your touch. The flames hiss, curl, and part, and for a heartbeat all of you see it. 3 faces in the fire, none of them your husband, all of them watching. You stagger back. The boy doesn't. He leans in, speaks 3 words, just above a whisper. You weren't done. Carrington's face strains. Voices. You demand, who weren't? He doesn't answer, but the fire does. It rises into a spiral, then splits, 2 trails, 2 paths. One leads into memory, the other into something else. Ledger draws his knife. The past is opening. You look to the boy. He's crying now, silently. He drops the tooth into the coals. It doesn't melt. It sings. And you know, deep in your marrow, what's coming. A reckoning, not of laws, of truths. And only those brave enough to speak without a tongue will survive it. The knock comes just after midnight. 3 short raps, a pause, then 2 more. You rise from your cot, heart tight. Ledger's already awake, standing by the door, knife in hand. The boy stirs but doesn't move. He's been feverish since sunset, skin clammy, mumbling in his sleep. You nod at Ledger. He opens the door. No one's there. Just cold, just silence. And then the wind shifts. From inside the forge room, a sound no smith ever wants to hear, the anvil screaming. You bolt into the workspace. The fire is wild, spitting sparks high into the rafters. Molten metal spills over the edge of the crucible. Too hot, too fast. Something's wrong. You reach for the bellows, but they're missing. Ledger finds them on the floor, cut, sliced clean across with a curved blade. Sabotage. The fire wasn't fed. It was bled. And in that moment, the anvil, that sacred iron heart, lets out a low, groaning shudder, then crack. The sound tears through the room like thunder. A split runs straight through the center of the anvil, right along the horn, the oldest part. The place where your husband struck every vow. You fall to your knees, not from weakness, from shock. Molten iron rolls toward you. You scramble back, but then you see it. In the cooling flow, a mark appears, circular, sharp, the spiral. But this time, it's not just a symbol, it's a brand. You recognize it. From the back of your husband's shoulder, a burn scar he never explained, said it was an accident. You never asked more, should have. The mark was put there, branded, and now the same pattern's rising from the fire like a scream made metal. Carrington kneels beside you. It's a blood seal, he says, used when someone takes guilt that isn't theirs. Your voice is hoarse. Then who was guilty? Ledger steps forward. He took their sins. He bound them. That's what this whole forge was for. Carrington swallows. That means the real guilty ones are still alive. A new fear ripples through you. The boy whimpers in the corner. You rush to him, his fever's worse, his lips moving. 3 names, he mutters. 3 verdicts, 1 lie. You glance to the cracked anvil. The crack forms a triangle, 3 points, 3 truths waiting. And now that the seal is broken, the fire wants more than justice. It wants witness. Outside, the wind howls louder. Hoofbeats echo from the east. Someone's coming or returning. You reach for the hammer, cracked but usable, and whisper to the boy, to yourself, to the forge, "We're not done. Not yet." They gather on the ridge where the old oak leans crooked toward the moon. Townsfolk, wrapped in coats and fear, faces pinched, hands clutching lanterns, shotguns, or Bibles. You've seen crowds like this in books, in nightmares. They say it's a trial, but no one says your name. They just call you her. Ledger stands beside you, jaw tight. Carrington wears his robe again, dusty, threadbare, but still enough to carry weight with those who need ceremony more than truth. The boy clutches your sleeve. He hasn't spoken since the anvil cracked. Then she steps forward, Esther Holloway, widow of the preacher, black dress, silver cross, and eyes like river ice. She speaks slow. Rachel Holloway, forged with bone, called flames from ashes, raised a child who doesn't speak and walks between fires. Gasps, murmurs. She bears the curse of her husband's sin, Esther continues, but instead of repentance, she invites judgment. You don't answer, not yet. Carrington lifts a hand. This isn't a sermon, Esther. She lifts her chin. Then let it be confession. He looks to you and asks only one thing. Did you choose the fire? You blink. The wind stills. Not did you light it, not did you use it, but did you choose it? You think of the forge glowing alone the night he died, of the symbols that rise only when you're near, of the tools you've made, the truth you've unsealed. And you say, yes. Whispers ripple. Esther steps forward. Then she admits it. But Carrington holds up a worn page, a confession, your husband's, the one he left in the tin box. You didn't see what was on the last line until now. I give it to her because she's the only one who won't lie. Esther's mouth opens, but Carrington speaks first. She took the fire, but not the sin. Ledger nods. She took the burden, like he did. The boy kneels beside the tree and draws the spiral in the dirt. 3 circles. Then he adds one more, a 4th. Esther points. That's devil's work. You step forward, voice steady. No, that's memory. You kneel beside the boy. Touch the new circle. It means one more name needs to come forward. Esther's hand flies to her chest. How dare... Carrington cuts her off. Where were you, Esther, the night your husband died? The hush that follows is deep. She stumbles. I was praying. Ledger speaks low. No, you were at the forge. You snap your head to him. What? He nods. I saw her, leaving, with her dress hem burned. Carrington turns slowly. You lit the fire? Esther backs up. I wanted it gone. I thought the fire would die with him. The boy looks up. Liar, he says. His voice clear as bells. He speaks. And in that moment, the stars above pulse once, as if even heaven had waited to hear him. The townspeople stare, not at you now, at her, and at the boy, who walks to the preacher's widow and hands her the tooth, the last one. Her hand trembles, then curls around it, and she falls to her knees. No screams, no curses, just a long, slow moan of surrender. Carrington says nothing more. The fire in your forge roars to life behind you, visible even from here. The trial is over. But the sentence, that's still unwritten. They don't speak as you walk back down the hill. No one follows. Not Carrington, not the townsfolk, not even Esther. She stays by the oak tree, clutching that tooth like a rosary carved from shame. Only the boy walks beside you, and Ledger. The fire at the forge flares when you arrive, tall and clean. It doesn't roar anymore. It breathes. Inside, everything feels different, warmer, clearer, as if the flames have waited long enough. You lay the hammer on the anvil, not to strike but to speak, and the fire listens. I used to think he just liked the heat, you begin, voice soft, that he hammered through winter because it gave his hands purpose. You look to Ledger. But I know now, he was burning it out every night, the guilt. Ledger nods. He forged penance. The boy stands near the coals, points to the old drawings, symbols, spirals, blood marks. Carrington steps in quietly, not speaking. You continue. He knew what they did to that boy's father, the wrongful hanging, the silence after. He watched the town drink and forget, and he couldn't. You pull the cracked ledger from the workbench. Inside, the last page is scorched, but the edge of one sentence remains. Only fire remembers what shame forgets. You look to Carrington. Why bring the wood? He sighs. Because I didn't know how to bury him right. You pick up the spiral brand, hold it to the coals until it glows red. I do. You press it into the stone beside the forge, where the symbols first appeared. It hisses, smokes, then stills. The boy steps forward and places the final tooth beside the mark. 3. And then he adds something, not a tooth, but a seed from his pocket, wrapped in cloth. You frown. What's that? He finally speaks again, voice gentler than before. A tree. From where they buried him. It grows slow, but it remembers. You understand, he means his father, the one your husband tried to save. Ledger nods slowly. He gave you fire, but you gave it meaning. Carrington adds, you turned the sentence into something worth carrying. The fire crackles, soft now. You sit on the floor, back against the forge. It wasn't a curse, you murmur. The boy leans beside you. No, he whispers, it was grief. You close your eyes, and the heat holds you like a memory that doesn't want to hurt anymore. Outside, the wind finally shifts. It smells like something clean, like something forgiven. The morning comes late, heavy with smoke and silence. You wake to the sound of boots on gravel, many boots, Ledger's already outside, blade at his hip, eyes narrowed toward the rise. Carrington stands on the porch with the boy, arms folded over the court record. And you step out into the light like it's your own courtroom. They're here, 15 men, maybe more. Some with pitchforks, some with rifles. Most carry torches. And none look you in the eye. The sheriff is not among them, but Esther is, face pale, dress smudged, voice steady for the first time in days. The fire must end, she says, before it takes the rest of us. You take one step forward. No, it already did. What's left is what it gave back. They don't listen. The torches move forward, but as they cross the fence line, the wind changes. Just enough. One flame licks sideways and leaps. A torch drops. Fire curls backward toward the ones holding it. They stumble, but no one's burned, not their hands, their eyes. One by one they blink hard, drop their torches, step back like they've seen something behind the flame that shook their bones. "What is this?" one mutters. You don't answer. Ledger does. "Truth," he says, burning hotter than you can stand. Carrington steps beside you. "They came for justice, found memory instead." Esther takes a half step forward. "You bewitched it." You shake your head. "No." You walk into the forge slowly, as the flames rise behind you, not angry now, awake. You place your hand on the anvil's cracked horn, and the forge answers. It doesn't flare. It opens. A single ember lifts from the coals, glides across the air like a firefly, and settles on Esther's chest. She gasps, but it doesn't burn, it shows. She drops to her knees, sobs once, then reaches into her shawl, pulls out a piece of cloth, unfolds it. Inside, a letter, your husband's handwriting. To Esther, "If you can't forgive me, forgive her. She bore none of this." You freeze. Carrington takes the letter, reads it, nods. "She knew," he says softly. "She tried to silence the fire," you say, "but it never wanted silence. Behind you, the flames dim." You step from the forge, soot across your face, iron in your bones. They look at you now, some with shame, some with awe, none with torches. You didn't fight them, you didn't burn, you stood in the fire and let it show what needed to be seen. The days that follow feel like waking from a fever, slow, heavy with memory, but cleaner. No one mentions the fire anymore. Not aloud, but its glow remains etched in the eyes of everyone who saw it rise, not just in heat, but in truth. Carrington stays longer than planned. He moves from door to door, ledger in hand. One by one, he marks debts as cleared, not out of pity, but as correction. He carries a tin box with him now, not for coin, but for names. Names wrongly accused, names whose stories were buried beneath hasty verdicts, and for each one he asks you to forge a marker, not a gravestone, a witness stone. You make 3 that first week, by the chapel, by the creek bed where that child drowned last winter, and one beneath the old oak where Esther finally speaks. She comes to you with red eyes and trembling hands. She doesn't carry a cross this time, just a small tin ring. Your husband made it for her years ago, when her hands were too swollen to wear her wedding band. "He told me once," she says, voice ragged, "that fire only harms what refuses to be shaped." She holds the ring out to you. "I couldn't be shaped back then." You say nothing. You take the ring, then press it into the cooling coals beside the forge. It hisses, then settles, forgiven. Ledger helps raise a new wall on the west side of the smithy. The townsfolk bring timber without being asked. The boy paints each board with symbols now, not dark ones, not spirals, stars. You ask him once why, he simply says, "They stayed." And you understand. That night, you all gather around the fire pit behind the forge, not the forge itself, just a simple, human fire. Bread is passed, coffee brewed, laughter rises. Carrington reads one last letter. Your husband's, one you never saw. It ends with this: "She'll hold the flame better than I ever could, because she sees not just the broken, but what still glows beneath." Ledger raises a tin cup in silent salute. Esther squeezes your hand. The boy leans into your side. And the town breathes together, not because justice came, but because they chose it. You find him before dawn, barefoot again, walking the ridge behind the forge. The wind has softened with spring, but the chill still clings to the stones. He carries no tools, no food, just a small pouch, cradled in both hands like something sacred. You follow in silence. He stops near a cluster of wild sage, ground he cleared yesterday without being asked. The earth is loose. Waiting. He kneels, opens the pouch, 3 teeth. You don't speak. Neither does he. Together you dig. Not deep, just enough. You set each tooth in its place, and he pours water after them, not from the tin cup, from his hands, 1 handful each. You ask, voice quiet, why here? He traces a new symbol into the dirt, a circle, a crack, a dot. It remembers, he says, and you know he doesn't mean the ground, he means the fire. You walk back slow. Carrington is gone now. Circuit to another town, another burden. He left a note tucked into the bellows. Not all justice comes with a gavel. Some just needs kindling. Ledger has taken to watching the mountain passes in the mornings. He doesn't say he's waiting for someone, but he mends saddles and sharpens blades like he expects travelers. Esther visits once a week now, brings biscuits, talks of planting wheat. She never asks about the forge. But she always leaves something at the door, a small flower, a ribbon, once a broken pendant. You melt that pendant into the spiral brand and hang it on the wall. The anvil stays cracked, but it sings when struck, soft, not broken, just changed. You make no new tools this week. Instead, you light one final flame, not for the town, not for your husband, for her. The woman who was once a name in whispered corners, who stood alone, who didn't burn. You walk to the forge with only one thing in hand, your ring. The iron one he made. You place it in the center of the coals. It glows for a long time, long enough for the stars to notice. And then, when you know it's time, you let it go. The fire flickers, then fades. Not with rage, with rest. The hammer hangs silent now, cleaned, wrapped, and placed above the mantel where light touches it gently each morning. The forge has cooled, but the memory lingers, not in ash or soot, but in how quiet the wind feels now when it moves through the trees. You still wake before dawn, but not to strike iron. You sit with a cup of chicory and watch the boy trace new paths in the soil behind the house. He hums sometimes, just under his breath, the kind of sound that only happens when sorrow's finally made peace with staying. Ledger built a bench near the edge of the ridge. He carved your name into it without telling you. The first time you sat there, the breeze carried the faintest scent of coal, not smoke, memory. The town no longer flinches at your presence. They wave now. They leave things, bread, cloth, requests. They still come to the forge sometimes. Broken plows, dull blades, questions they don't ask aloud. And you answer when you're ready, not before. You never replaced the anvil. You planted sage beside it instead. It grew fast, like it knew where it was, like it had waited. Tonight the fire sleeps, and so do you. With the ring gone, the boy safe. And a warmth beneath your ribs that doesn't need flame to exist. Only silence, only breath. Only the truth that once glowed and still does, in everything you've held, let go, and chosen to become. Sweet dreams.